Hi, I got this Rogue Trader vintage Rhino second hand from eBay, and as you can see, although what is here is in excellent condition, it appears to have never been touched by paint, there are rather a lot of pieces missing. It is basically just a shell of a vehicle. And my original plan when I bought it was that I would delve into my stock of spare parts from Rogue Trader vintage kits, and I would complete this Rhino as it had intended to be. The one hitch with that is here, either side, and that's the exhausts, because I don't have any spare exhaust pipes. So that would mean I would just have to scratch build an equivalent. And then the idea hit me that instead of just replacing the exhaust pipes with custom parts, what if I replaced all of the missing pieces with custom parts instead and build something a little more unique? And so that's what I'm going to do. Now, a lot of the parts will just be from spare odds and ends I have around. I may use some Games Workshop parts in certain places, and so that I can give it the look of a conversion that could have been made when this kit was first available, although that would have been in its sort of bone-coloured plastic version instead of this later grey one. I will only be using Rogue Trader vintage parts when I do, and hopefully I'd like you to stick with me and see what I can come up with. I'm starting off by replacing the hatches either side of the Rhino chassis, and the originals were circular, and I've decided I want circular hatches as well rather than just square, or at least hatches with straight edges. And it just so happens that if you take a 25mm figure base, which was the standard base of the time during Rogue Trader, that fits neatly in between the two lugs that form part of the hinges on the original hatch. So what I've done is taken a 25mm blank figure base rather than one that actually has a slot in it, and I have detailed it to provide a small porthole which is made from a washer, and a handle for opening the door, which is two pieces of plastic card. There's a very thin disc made simply with a hole punch, and then a short length of 1mm thick plastic card to form the actual handle. Now you'll notice there's white inside the porthole, and if I tilt it like so, you'll be able to see that the washer is sitting on a white base. That's because the washers have to be glued to the styrene plastic with super glue, which means you've got to get it right first time. And I found that if I instead glue the washer to a very thin sheet of plastic card, I can then trim that around, and it's sitting on a styrene base that I can then attach using plastic glue, which gives me far more opportunity to reposition it if I get it wrong. And if I just turn this around, you'll be able to see that I've got the other hatch already in place. The two hatches are mirrored so that both of them will have the hinges at the front, and they will, so it would be as if they would open like that to provide some cover as troops bail out, assuming that the enemy is to the front of the vehicle. And then I've built some hinges either top and bottom of the front lug, just using a couple of small bits of plastic card each. There's a 2mm thick piece, which is then 3mm deep to match the depth of the base used for the hatch, and then just a short strip of 0.5mm thick plastic card over the top of that, so that it covers part of the hatch. There is of course a little hole left in there. I'll just be filling that in later. Next, I'm going to look at the replacements for the two cupolas that were here on the roof of the Rhino on the original kit. And these mounted the two bolt guns that the vehicles were originally armed with before they were combined into a storm bolter. And I'm actually going to follow that pattern by combining 2 bolt guns to form a storm bolter in a single fitting. Only I am going to make a turret rather than just a simple cupola or pintle mounted weapon. And this is the turret I've made. I have used 3 25mm round slotter bases again. And then I have built a hatch on top with a washer covered in plasticard. With some more bits of plasticard to form hinges and a rim and a handle. And then at the front are the aforementioned bolt guns. And these are taken from RTB01. I simply cut 2 bolt guns down, removing the magazines and the backs of the weapons. And I've used extra plasticard underneath to make the heights right, because of course this is larger than the original cupola, so it will overlap the edge of the central hull, and so they help it fit in place like so. Now you'll notice along the Rhino gap, I actually believe it was called that by a lot of people, I've put some bits of plasticard inside. That's because I do intend to fill these, and having some plasticard there to act as a base will help me do that without using quite so much milliput. Now on the other cupola, I don't need another turret obviously, so this is going to be more of a cupola again, but I'm still basing it on a 25mm base. And this is what I've created. You can see here I put the hatch open. You can see the washer I've used to make it. Extra plasticard again to form handle and hinges. And I've also added some viewports around the base of the cupola. So that fits in there. And of course it is open because I intend to put a crewman in. And this is the crewman. And again, he is made from parts from RTB01. I have taken a missile launcher firing arm, a bolter holding left arm, and turned the hands round on each to get a better pose. On the back, instead of the power pack that most powered armour infantry carry, I've just used a plasticard and a bit of wire to add some detail, because vehicle crew frequently don't have the full power pack on, so I've replicated that on this figure as well. With the cupolas now done, I am going to turn my attention to where the large rooftop hatch would have been towards the rear of the Rhino, and you can see that I've already glued in place 2 shelves on the inside of the kit that will support what I'm putting in, because I'm going to put in a piece which will fit neatly within this area, and I raised the top of them up slightly with an extra sheet of 0.5mm thick plasticard, so the base of my replacement part would be flush with the surface of the roof. And what I've done is this. I've kept the idea of a large rear hatch with a couple of handles on, but I've made it slightly smaller so that I can get this raised section here that is made from a strip of 2mm thick plasticard. Then I've just detailed it with a sort of half round section, and then 2 short bits of sprue which form the basis of some antennas, which are just bits of copper wire. The handles again are bent copper wire, and the fixing points of the handles to the door are made using small washers. For all of the wire, it's just drilled right the way through and then cut off level with the base. And this will just fit neatly, like so, into the hole, completing the roof of the vehicle. Now that I've finished the roof of the model, I'm moving on to this front section here. And in the original kit, this was one of the few places where you actually had an option of what you fitted, because there was either the duplicate of the headlight bar, which goes on at the back here, or there was the spiked ram bar. And what I am going to fit in place of those two is a dozer blade, and I have built this dozer blade out of plasticard, largely 1mm thick, with some 2mm thick sort of details along the bottom to give it a spiked look. And then the mounting bracket is also made from a couple of strips of 2mm thick plastic card with some different lengths of plastic rod inside to give it the look of the mounting. And this is designed so that it fits neatly into the gap at the front, like so. It is the same width as the overall hull, which is 60mm, and the height is designed so that as it sits on the ground, it doesn't quite obscure the headlights, so they would still be useful even with the dozer blade mounted at the front, like so. With the dozer blade now glued in place, I'm going to move on to constructing the exhaust pipes, which are the reason for this project in the first place. And to begin with, I have built the basic exhaust system from a length of plastic tubing that then has a slightly narrower length inserted inside to narrow the internal diameter to be closer to that of this bit of wire you see here, which is the exhaust itself. Now the diameters of these two bits of tubing are in fact the same as the ones I've used here on the dozer blade. They are then glued onto a 1mm thick strip of plastic card, and the bottom is sealed with another bit of plastic card like so, and that can then be covered with a 1/4mm thick strip of plastic card, which seals the unit, gives me a nice flat surface, which can be detailed by simply covering it in some aluminium mesh, like so. This can then be glued to the vehicle, just as I've done here with this one. And now I just need to duplicate this in the other 3 locations. Now that the exhausts have been glued to the Rhino, I'm going to move on to the handrails that are present either side of the hull on the original kit. And in preparation for this, I have glued 3 small washers. These are the same sorts of washers I've used up here on these handles. And these are glued in the same places as the handrail would make contact using the original parts. I have also glued to each side a 4th small washer here at the front. And this is because I will be making the handrail come slightly further forwards than the original one so that it clears this exhaust pipe. Normally it would make contact on this little stub here. Obviously it can't do that easily now, so I've got a new fixing point and I will be removing this little stub instead. And here we have the handrails fitted to the Rhino, and as you can see, these are made using 2 short pieces of copper wire which just stick straight out from the hull at these points, and then I've used 1 longer length of wire bent all the way around, and at each point the wire extends down through the washers into the holes drilled in the hull and then into the hull to give it some firm anchoring points. Now I'm turning my attention to the vehicle's external storage, and in the original kit, of course, there were these 2 boxes, one either side, but on this particular model only the one on the right hand side is still present. And I considered several options for the left hand side storage, from some rolled up paper to make sort of camouflage netting or tarpaulins being carried on the vehicle, to a couple of tubes in a rack, but none of them really seemed right. However, then I discovered that I had a number of these rather archaic capacitors, and so what I did was I chopped off the legs and glued a number of them together to form some storage like so. Now I have had to stick these down to a sheet of very thin plastic card. That is because the interior of the capacitor is slightly concave, so they won't stick very well straight to a flat surface, and what I instead did was glued these to the thin bit of plastic card using some hot melt glue, and then that bit of plastic card could then be stuck to the model itself. And you can see here that I have now filled in the infamous Rhino gap with some milliput, and I've used a little bit more to fill in the small gaps that were left on the tops of the exhaust pipes. I've also just added this small vision block here to the top of the turret, made out of a few tiny pieces of plastic card, and that is just so that a gunner would have a sensible way of aiming the bolters or storm bolter that the vehicle is armed with. So, with all of the missing parts now replaced with custom built versions of my own, it's time for me to paint this vehicle. And here is the painted and finished Rhino armoured personnel carrier, made from the shell of the original pattern of kit, but with custom parts used to replace all those that are missing. So, if you happen to see something similar on eBay for a reasonable price, and I've seen quite a few of them, don't worry about not having the parts needed to replace those missing ones with originals. You can just make them yourself and come up with a unique vehicle that still fits in with the original aesthetic. So I hope you've enjoyed this little conversion video, and thanks for watching. Bye.